Welcome to Side Alpha Leadership, a podcast where leaders can share their experiences and discuss what leadership means to them. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Good afternoon and welcome to this month's edition of Side Alpha Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to a friend and neighbor of mine, Clay Anderson. Clay, welcome to the show, and tell everybody that's listening a little bit about yourself.
Hey, awesome. Hey, I just want to say, first of all, thanks for having me. So a little quick background. I've been on active duty now for just under 18 years. I've been a lot of places and had the opportunity to see a lot of things thanks to my service. I've had the fortunate opportunity to lead some pretty amazing people and some amazing teams, both stateside and while deployed. I've also sat as a president, co-founder of a wounded veteran nonprofit organization for a period of time. Right now, I'm currently working on my master's degree in strategic leadership, and hopefully I can get that done before I retire here in a few years. Other than that, I'm just excited to be here.
Well, excuse me, glad you're here, and as you know, being the Side Alpha Leadership, we talk all about the different aspects of leadership and how it affects everyday life, be it business world, the military world, fire rescue, police, and then kind of we see how they intersect with each other and how that even though if somebody's in the military, in the fire department or the police department or even in the business world, how those lines of leadership intersect with each other and how we can learn from one another and apply those leadership traits and lessons that we've learned along the way to any aspect in life. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So what kind of topics did you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so, I was thinking about this, over the course of my career in the military, I've definitely learned a lot in regards to leadership. As a junior enlisted, it was watching the good and the bad leaders, what to do and what not to do. As I grew up in the ranks, I learned a lot about leadership firsthand through my own successes, but also, I think more importantly, my own failures. And I think that experience is a really important key thing. Actually, I have a favorite saying of mine that's a smooth sea never made for a skilled sailor. And I've also learned a lot through my own professional development that's been given to me through the military because they just do a great job in providing a lot of different opportunities for leadership training. Also through my own educational degree and background. But I think the most impactful has been through the mentors and friends alike within the military community that I've grown up with that have given me an abundance amount of advice. And that, I think, by far has certainly been my biggest resource. With that being said, I've certainly developed my own quote-unquote list of things that I would offer to anyone who has any interest in becoming a leader, or if they already are, becoming a better leader. So I thought I'd go through some of those for this podcast and kind of see where it goes.
That sounds good. Now, real quick, I want to touch on a couple of things before we move into the topics. When you enlisted, did you enlist at a high school or did you enlist at a college?
No, I enlisted straight out of high school. So I actually had a contract for the Navy before I was a senior in high school. So it was the summer break period. You can go into what was called the delayed entry program for up to 12 months. And so I'd already went and talked to the recruiter, got my contract, and then did my senior year in high school. And then the next month after I graduated, I was shipped off.
And through that, obviously, you've gained your college degree along the way, and then you entered into you went from a non-commissioned officer into a commissioned officer, or are you still in like the non-commissioned ranks?
Yeah, I'm in the enlisted ranks. I'm a senior chief petty officer. It's an E8. I've definitely worked, through from E2 to E8 over the course of, my time in service.
Now, how hard was it for you to get your degree while you were working full time for the military versus somebody that would have come out with a degree?
Sure.
You hear a lot of stories that, people that come right out of college and then they enlist into the military and they automatically get that officer, commissioned officer,
right.
Like I said, I'm not in the military. This is just what I've heard, versus somebody who's actually kind of been in the trenches a little bit, no pun intended, and been able to work themselves up get their college degree and then move on to into the ranks of commissioned officer, where does it seem that you're a little more respected when you come through the ranks than you go through your officer's class, or when you come right out of college and then you join as an officer? What's been your experience? What have you seen?
Well, I'd first start off by saying the Navy, as I can speak to the Navy does a tremendous job in providing off-duty educational opportunities. We have a couple ways to do so, right? We have the Montgomery GI Bill, or now it's called the Post 9/11 GI Bill, which you can, you have a certain amount of funds in order to support your educational desires. But while you're active duty, we have tuition assistance, which for me, I've done my associates, my bachelor's, and now I'm halfway through my master's, and I have not dropped a dime on education at all. It's all been covered under the tuition assistance program.
Well, that's awesome, and the reason why I wanted to stray off a little bit, because I want people out there that listen to this that understand that college is expensive, and instead of, if money's tight and you want to go to school, being enlisting in the military and then having them pay for your education, yeah, you're going to have to give back to the military, but what you get out of is an education that the United States government pays for, and that makes you a better enlisted person, be it in the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines, and it allows you to get that education without having that burden of being saddled with that bill that's going to come due once you graduate. So I don't think there's any more thing anybody can do that's nobler than to serve the public, be it in as a public service or as in the military. So my hat's off to you, and I wanted to get that out there because I want people to understand that you don't have to get right out of high school and then go try to find a 4-year college. You can enlist in the military, and it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you didn't have a college degree doesn't mean you can't get one while you're in the military. And then you may find that, you know what, this is a great career. I'm going to sink 25, 30 years into the military, give back to what they've given me. And then when you leave, especially when you start when you're 18, you do 30 years, you're in your very early 50s, if not late 40s. You can go get another career somewhere. And those skills that you learn in the military are valuable, and especially the leadership stuff. So I wanted to kind of throw that out
absolutely.
there.
So that's exactly why I joined. Well, that's one of the big reasons why I joined the Navy was I couldn't afford to go to college. College was super expensive, and so my sister and I actually joined on the exact same day because we were both kind of in the same scenario. And I kind of tease her because she got out after 10 years. So I have to call her. But it's been a great opportunity. They've given us a lot. And some tours or some duty stations are easier to get, assignments or take educational courses than others. It's a little bit more challenging if you're in a deployable billet and you're going, forward, trying to maintain college courses. It's not impossible. People do it all the time. For me personally, I did the majority of my education, off-duty education, while I was on shore assignments, and it was great.
Oh, awesome. So not trying to hijack the conversation, but I did want to get that out there, that the opportunity for college is out there. If money's tight, the military is looking, not to sound like a cliche commercial, they're looking for good people. And with that, they're going to educate you. So let's go ahead and dive into some of these topics that you wanted to talk about today, and we'll kind of pick them apart and see how it applies to life and the business world and just, personal and professional life.
Yeah, and as I go through these, I find it really interesting, as you mentioned before, the comparisons to even the fire service. Like the military is really the only thing that I've ever known and experienced because I came right out of high school and went straight to the military. So interested to see your take on some of these topics.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So the first one I have some notes here. The first one I have is servant leadership. For me, leadership is not a one-way street. You have to build trust in order to establish a team. It has to be transactional. You can't just take their contributions. You must give back to them. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. Empowering your people versus micromanaging them. I think a really big part of that is giving them ownership. I have a great recent example of this, but to get to that, I have to tie in a few other empowering tools real quick. And, that is being mindful of the environment that you set
and not just hearing but listening. I can explain more in a second. But as the story goes, there were a few junior enlisted that had a concern about something at work. Because of the environment that was created by the leadership, those junior personnel were comfortable bringing up a concern. So that might not sound like a big deal, but it is. To a junior sailor, to a junior employee, talking to a person of authority can be intimidating. It can be difficult. It can be scary. But in this particular environment, the leadership had an established culture that made sailors comfortable in doing that. So the person in charge heard their concern, and this person did something that I think is right out of the leadership playbook. He gave them the ownership to fix it. So he set out a framework, which in this particular case was, this is at the end of the day, this is the end result that I want you guys to produce, and here's a timeline in which to do it in. But pushed all of the creative development to them. So that meant the absolute world to these sailors, and it showed in their actions. They went to great lengths to research the topic, to talk to all of those involved, to get insight on what was going on, and also to develop several feasible courses of action to overcome this concern that they brought up. So I had this is a while ago, but I had the opportunity to be there when they briefed this leader. And let me tell you, their passion, the knowledge that they gained through that process, and their professionalism in doing so, especially for such junior personnel, was absolutely incredible. So think about that. Like these sailors, junior sailors, first and foremost, were empowered to bring truth to power, which I have a little bit more about that in a second. And then after giving them ownership of the solution, they brought forward great solutions for the organization. Now, think of the secondary and tertiary effects of that. Who in the organization saw what happened, saw that the leadership, was engaging and gave them the opportunities and is now empowered? Who in the organization now has trust in the leadership that they not only hear, but they care? So I think this is a great example on how the best ideas also are not restricted by rank or position. Sometimes the best ideas can come from the most junior person. And as a leader, if you go into a room and think that you are the smartest person, you have already lost. And to me, all of this builds trust, and trust is certainly, in my opinion, a cornerstone of effective leadership.
It's funny, we're going to, how we talk about, we're going to tie this in with, like you, I've been in the fire department in one fashion or another since I was 12 years old. Started as a junior member, and I got hired when, right out of high school. I was 18 years old, and then I went to college while I was also in the fire service. But some things that I learned along the way, everything that you're talking about is stuff that I've been bringing up to my captains and to the people that I work with, including from the juniors, firefighters, all the way up to my captains. And one of the things, I like to talk, we call them kitchen table talks. And I tell everybody the kitchen table is the great equalizer. Everybody at the kitchen table has a voice. Everybody has a chance to air some concerns as long as everything's done with respect. And that's kind of what I want from my people, is I want them to be able to be comfortable to say to the captain, hey, we don't like this, we'd like to change this, or we don't understand why this is happening, we don't think that's right for the situation. And to be able to, when we sit at the kitchen table, to lean over to me and just say, hey, Chief, why do we have to do it this way? And what I challenge my people to do is I said, you can always bring me a problem, but you have to have a solution with it. Anybody can just come into my office and start talking about problems, but bring me a solution. And one of the things that you talked about is how you can't always have the captains and the lieutenants or the senior leadership coming up with all the solutions, because what ends up happening is it becomes stale. If one person is constantly coming up with all the solutions, you're kind of missing the boat of who's out there. And one of the things that I've said about the fire service is that the new people that are coming in are super smart. You know, they are in an era where they have never known what it's not like to have a cell phone or what it's not like to have a computer. You know, when I came in, we had like one computer for our whole battalion. We didn't have cell phones, so they've got everything at the palm of their hand. So they're coming in pretty smart. So to be able to tap these new people and ask them a question, or even if as a leader you have noticed that there's an issue, take it to the guys. What do you guys think about this? How would you solve this? And then let that conversation kind of go. So the stuff that you're talking about, we're moving into that in the fire service as well. And I'm sure it's not just in the fire service, but the huge thing is that you got to take the ego out of it. Just because you have the collar pins or just because you are the highest ranking person, again, like you said, you're not the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into another piece that I'll talk about here in a little bit about humility. But yeah, allowing people to solve those problems, it just brings their ability to have ownership in the problem. And that, if you don't have ownership, then why am I here? And that's such a powerful tool. I agree.
And I think that sparks enthusiasm too. Now the guys are really, like, hey, the chief says that he's going to allow us to solve these issues, and you get that buy-in, and then the morale starts to creep up. People aren't going to feel stale. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, with all these things, when you mention the morale as a secondary effect, all these characteristics of good leadership, if implemented the right way, one thing or another thing, it has these second and tertiary effects that can positively impact the organization, the mission, the command, whatever the case is, simply because for example, you gave them the opportunity to take ownership of a problem.
Now, when you first came in, was this happening, or is this something that's evolving in the military now as you are putting in more time?
That's a good question. I definitely have seen it evolve more over time than when I first came in. Not to say that when I first came in that didn't happen. It most certainly did happen. But for me right now as a leader in the military, I know I can go down to somebody, and it's not a common thing for that to happen, to say, hey, this is the problem. There's something that's going on right here. I want you to fix it. But you be creative. At the end of the day, this is what I want. Just like in that example, and giving people ownership. Yeah, I think it happens a little bit now more than it did before, but not to say that it was absent before.
It's funny. We had an issue with the new fire engines that we had coming in, and we had we have netting on the back. It's part of an NFPA requirement where we have to have some netting on the back that keeps the hose from coming out and harming property or people. And they were having a problem getting this netting to drop down when we arrive on a call. We have to lay hose on the street and put it around a hydrant and go. And they were having a problem getting this netting right. And they were working on this problem, I would say, for a couple of months. So I just happened to be up at our maintenance facility, and the guy that the assistant chief that's responsible for that maintenance is a very good friend of mine. I've known him for many years. And I looked at him and I said, Pete, I said, if you want this problem solved, I said, what you should do is go to a firehouse and say, yeah, we've got this real problem with this netting, and there's no way we can solve it. We just there's no answer out there. We don't know how to solve this problem. It just can't be done, and then leave. I said, you'll be surprised how many different prototypes and different solutions you'll have to that problem by telling a firefighter, yeah, you can't do that. It just can't be done. They're going to find a way to do it. So that's, that little bit of reverse psychology. And lo and behold, they did come up with the solution, and we're using it today. So do you use that? Have you ever had to use that type of solution, just to go in and just say, like, yep, this is a problem that we just can't tackle. So, we're just going to have to leave it as it is. I know everybody doesn't like it. Or do they just kind of come to you right away and say, this is terrible, this sucks, this is how we want to fix it?
Oh, no, I definitely have an example. In fact, my next piece here, I was going to talk about just something about that, going back to servant leadership. And, you can't be a servant leader if you don't have awareness of who your people are. You have to know what motivates them, what drives them, what they're good at outside of work, what's their educational background, what makes them tick, what are their goals. In the Navy, we have a term for this. It's called deck plate leadership. Knowing all of this can help you help them and also help the organization in so many ways. So this is one time, we had a guy that was in his off-duty time was pursuing a degree in computer programming. He was so smart when it came to computers and can do anything you asked him to. Well, the division had a need to develop a better method to track a whole bunch of administrative requirements for all of their people. So knowing this, knowing that he had a passion for this, the chain of command gave him the problem set and asked him for whatever possible solution based off of his technical background. And this wasn't in line with what he was assigned to do in the military. This was just a passion that he did off to the side and what he was pursuing an educational degree for. Man, let me tell you, he not only took on the task, but he owned it. He developed this huge, comprehensive computer tool that was not only easy to use and fix the problem, but he was empowered. His morale instantly went up. The division operated more smoothly, and he just thirsted for more opportunities elsewhere. So it was great. It was a good example.
I think that seeing, to not wear out the word, but to empower your people, just to say like, hey guys, I want you to solve this problem. Come to me with some solutions. Here's your, like you said, here's your parameters. Here's your timeline. Come to me with what you have, even if it's a rough draft, and then we can go from there. And I think when the more buy-in you get, and the product starts to look really good, and then you actually see it implemented, the guys knowing that they had their fingerprints on that, and they were responsible to put a piece of something together that is being used, whether it be across the entire Navy or being used in the firehouse, across all three shifts or across the entire department or battalion. That again, it goes back to that. It builds the morale. They're going to thirst for wanting to do more projects, especially if they know that you have the faith in them as their leader to come up with a problem. And that also starts to bring in a little bit of pride. You and I talked about pride. There's a couple of different types of pride. There's some bad pride and good pride, but it brings the good pride out where you can actually, as a leader, start bragging about your people to the other battalions and platoons or what have you, and maybe bring those people along to say like, well, we want to be everybody as good as them, or listen to Clay. He's boasting about his people. Our guys are just as good, and then maybe that sparks some more, a little bit of competition, but friendly competition.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I've seen that has over the course of my career that has always been really effective is when people take over new divisions or departments or even commands. When they come in, I've had this happen before where I was junior enlisted, and the chief comes in, brand new chief to the division, and they sit down with the entire division. It's like, hey, this is who I am. I'm coming in, but hey, I really want to sit down and understand what's good and what can be improved. So they go over what's good and whatever, and then what can be improved. So now all these sailors are able to talk to the incoming chief and tell them like these are some things that can be improved. So right off the bat, the chief is telling them that I'm here to listen. I'm here to make things better, but I need your input. I value your opinion. I value your input. And then he wasn't just done when he asked them like what can be improved. It was, okay, these are all the things that you said that need to be improved. So how do we do this? Over to you. Show me the solution. And again, people will, if they believe and they're passionate about something that needs to be changed, and then they're giving the opportunity to actually drive the problem, great things happen.
Yeah, and we see the same thing at work. Again, it's funny because now my captains will come, they'll knock on the door, and they say, look, I don't like bringing you problems, but I have a solution, because they already know where I'm going with it. It's like, hey, bring me anything you want to my door, but tell me how you want to fix it. Nothing makes me happier for somebody to call up and say, hey, our ladder truck, the outrigger's sticking on it, and we're not going to be able to run it. It's going to be out of service. I've already called our central maintenance facility, and I've already done the ticket write-up on it, and we're going to go ahead and head on up to CMF if you're good with that. All I have to do is like, perfect, thank you. Right. I don't have to make any phone calls. I don't have to make any decisions. All I have to do is make sure that I can support them going and getting that thing fixed. And they get buy-in from that. Then they know that they have that they have the credibility with me that they can make decisions that they feel are what's best for the situation at hand, and know that I'll
Right.
go along with it, providing that it was something that was thought out.
Yeah, that's definitely something I learned early in my career is you never bring up a problem to anybody in leadership unless you already have the solution in your pocket.
Right. Because, like I said, anybody can bitch and complain, and nobody wants to hear that. But if you bitch and complain and say, but I think I have a way that I can make this better, or I can fix it or ease it up a little bit, then you're going to have your leaders they're going to perk up and listen, providing that,
Right.
that their ego's in check. But so carry on, continue on.
Yeah, so along that, I'll also say that you must be able to know your people to understand their baseline, the baseline presence. That going back to the whole deck plate leadership conversation, and if you can do that, you can understand when someone's deviating from their baseline behaviors. Then you can really catch those subtle clues on when something isn't right, and you can step in. One of the most impactful things I've learned in my service is that more often than not, when someone isn't performing at work, so up until this point is all about people performing, right? But when someone isn't performing, it's usually because of something that is happening outside of the four walls at work. And I think if you're truly a servant leader and care about your people, and moreover help them in all appropriate ways possible, and I would say too, like of note, sometimes the help that they need isn't always the help that they want. Then you are establishing a team and an environment in which people not only want to come to work, they're motivated to do their best. As a tool in my toolbox, so to speak, I like to use the 7 layers of why. Have you ever heard this before?
Yes. But
Yeah, I love
talk about it, because
Yeah.
I throw those books out there. With it starts with why and things like that. But talk about that.
Yeah, so someone told me early on that you can't just ask a question and think that's the right or the final answer. To really get to the truth of what's going on and what the problem is, you need to ask why at least 7 times. Now, granted, it's not always going to be 7 times, but the concept is there. You have to continue to pull back the layers to get to the actual core of the truth.
When I teach, we talk about for promotional exams, we have assessment centers, and there we are always graded on different dimensions in the assessment center. And one of the things that I talk about is that you're going to probably somewhere in your career have an assessment center that's going to have a one-on-one employee interview who the employee's probably not performing, and you're going to have everything that you need in front of you, his personnel file and all that stuff, and you're going to have to be able to kind of wade through everything that's going on by asking questions to probe and find out what's going on, to find out what the underlying problem is. And what you had said earlier is being able to know your people. And that means that you have to actually get out of the office and sit down and talk with them. That's where we talk about these kitchen table talks, to know who the people are, so you know when something's not right, they're not performing.
Right.
It's not because they're lazy or they're a piece of garbage or anything like that. It's because something's happening. And
Right.
as the leader of the organization or the leader of that platoon or that battalion, it's your responsibility to find out what's going on. And if it is an issue, like the military or like the fire service, I'm sure the military has many things at their disposal to help with outside issues, whether it be
Absolutely.
personal, financial, mental. Those things are there, and that's knowing your people, and that's also being that good leader to steer that person in the right direction. And I tell my captains, you need to know your people. You need to make FaceTime and eye contact in the morning when you're doing your morning lineups, to make sure that everybody's good. Take a pulse of what's going on the shift. And if somebody's not acting right, and when they see that you're probing to find out what's going on, then the rest of the people are going to be probing each other. And you may have a firefighter come up and say, hey, Cap, Firefighter Smith, he something's not right. He's just not himself today. That might clue you in to maybe you need to pull him in the office and say, hey, is everything okay? And you'd be surprised that behind closed doors, and if people truly believe that you are honest and genuine and that you care about them, they're going to open up and they're going to tell you some stuff. Sometimes more than you want to know, but it's your responsibility to help them. So I think that's fantastic that you brought that up with the asking the why, especially when it comes to problems, to probe, to find out. I try to tell rookies, and I tell my kids the same thing. I said, if I tell you no, I'm going to tell you why. I'm not just going to say because I said so. And my kids will call me on that. When I say, okay, can we do this? No. How come? Because I said so. You always told us you would give you an answer. So it's got to be the same way at work as well.
Yeah, you brought up, knowing your people, but knowing, the different resources and stuff. You're right. The Navy and the military at large has a ton of resources. If a sailor comes up to me and we identify that there's, financial issues, we have a ton of financial resources and counselings and stuff, people that can, handle that or help them, or mental health or physical fitness or whatever the case is. The resources are enormous. And I think, it's not just about knowing your people, but also knowing those resources. So when someone is brave and courageous enough to go up to you because you are approachable or should be as a good leader and tell you and open up and say, this is a problem that I'm experiencing right now, you know what direction to point them in and what resources that you have at your, available to you that you can put them in contact with to help them through it. And I think that also ties into building that trust factor between them. So not only, from their perspective, not only was I able to go approach this person, tell them, open up and tell them what was really going on outside the four walls at work, but they helped me and they gave me resources immediately.
That's and I would assume that the military is the same as the fire service. At the end of the day, we want you to succeed. We don't want you to fail. We want you to be the best
Right.
you that you can be. And if you're struggling, we want to be able to help you.
Right.
It may back in the day, back when we call the war years, back in the very early '80s, late '70s, it was one of the and you had a lot of the military veterans coming into the fire service, the Vietnam veterans and whatnot, coming into the fire service, and it was all about you keep your problems to yourself. You leave those at home, and nowadays we don't do that, and it's difficult because how complicated life can get. It's
Right.
hard to leave stuff at home, and it's going to affect your work. But knowing that you're approachable, or knowing that you know your people, and when something's off, you can approach your people, and they know that they can trust you to keep it confidential, and that you're going to give them the help. You're genuine.
Yeah, there was an instance before, this was many years ago, where there was someone that worked for me that you can just you can tell that there was something going on. We were able to talk to the sailor, came into the office and was able to open up, but we knew that if we just gave them the resource, that they wouldn't do anything with it. And talking about deck plate leadership and knowing your people, that was a big factor in this. And so part of the conversation that we had was, why don't I pick up the phone right now, dial this number, and give you the phone so you can make the appointment for this mental health appointment, versus here's the number, go away, not go away, but here's the number, go make the appointment on your own. And some people that works, and some people they will. But we knew specifically this person would not do that. And so knowing your people, we were able to actually get that person an appointment really quickly. And, we still gave them the option. It's like, here's the number. Let me call it for you. And they were able to do it. And they actually came back at a later date after they definitely got a lot better. And they even told us, like, I would have not had called if I left that office with just the number. If you guys didn't pick up the phone and call for me, I would have never made that appointment.
And again, you said it goes back to knowing your people and what their strengths and weaknesses are. And some people we have to spoon feed a little bit, and some people we can point them in the right direction,
Right.
and they're going to pick up the baton and move forward.
Yeah. So going into my next topic here, if you will. So that was all servant leadership, and I mean, really, servant leadership we could talk all night about. But the next really big topic that I always love to talk about when it comes to leadership is humility. So if you make a mistake as a leader, you have to own up to it. You don't deflect it on anyone else. You don't blame the person above you. You don't blame the person below you. You roger up to it, and you take ownership in the punishment or consequences that comes with it. This is obviously just one aspect of humility, but we all make mistakes, and it happens. But when you don't own it, it sends a very clear message to everyone who has witnessed what happened about your integrity. And in my opinion, integrity is the most important character trait of a leader.
Yeah, I agree. We talk about reputation, integrity, reputation. It takes long time, very long time, years to build up a good reputation, and it only takes a minute to destroy it.
Man, you're right.
And just the other way around, if I tell people, I said, if you come off as a new recruit and your reputation is you're a bag of turds, you're going to have a hard time building your reputation up to being somebody who's not what they thought you were. And I've told people, I said, if you were a piece of garbage for 5, 6 years, and then you go into a burning building and you rescue 5 children, and it was like a heroic rescue, and just you were the man of the moment. At the end of the day, people are going to look at you and say, "Yeah, that's that piece of garbage that rescued 5 children." So a reputation is, it's very hard to maintain a strong reputation, but so easy to lose it. And the humility does play a big part of that. And I try to tell my guys, look, it's okay to make mistakes. It's all part of the decision-making process. We give you the least amount of information in the worst situation for you to make split-second decisions. It's really easy for somebody to come behind you and say, "Oh, I would have done it this way." So if you make a mistake or it wasn't the best decision, we use it as a teaching moment. It's like, hey, here's what we could have done that was a little bit different. What you did worked. This would have made it work a little bit quicker. Same thing as a leader. Like you said, you make a mistake, you got to own it right away. Hey, guys, and be honest about it and be upfront and verbalize it to everybody. I made a mistake. I was wrong. And this is how I'm going to move forward from this so it doesn't happen again. And
Right.
And then make that a teachable moment to your people. I don't want you to do this. This is what I did wrong. Learn from what I did, and then we can move forward. But yeah, the moment you start to try to blame it up and down the chain of command or start blaming your guys, you've lost them. You're not gonna get the promotion, and you're not gonna get the respect from your guys.
You have to set the example, and that if you don't take ownership of your own mistakes, then if that was a leader of mine, and I witnessed him or her make a mistake and didn't take ownership and just blamed other people, there's a saying. It goes, whatever you set in your presence is your standard, or whatever you accept in your presence is your standard. You just told me that it's okay for me to one, not have any humility, but two, not take ownership at all for any of my mistakes and just blame it on everybody else. It's just a toxic characteristic trait.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people. I said, we measure the strength of your leadership is by what you allow your people to get away with. And if you're not a strong leader and you let them walk all over you or constantly make mistakes or let them trash the organization or you trash the organization in front of your people, then you're not going to really rise as a leader in the organization. And your people might like you for the time being, maybe for the then and now, but as you move forward, they're going to look back at you and say, that was a pretty negative leader, and use you as an example of what not to be. So let's continue on with this humility, because this plays a huge part, not only as a boss, but in the fire service, in the business world, as well as in the military.
Yeah, one of the other pieces where I've seen humility come into play a lot, and the negative example as I've grown up through the ranks and just seen situations play out is people, or leaders rather, saying or trying to show that they know things that they don't. So like we have to acknowledge that as a leader you don't know everything, and that's the humility piece. Like I understand I'm a senior enlisted, but I don't know everything. I've seen this happen over and over again when leaders just can't accept that, and they say whatever just to save their own pride of not knowing. Obviously this is one little example, but if someone asks you a question, especially one that you should know, you don't shoot from the hip and just say something that isn't right. You go look it up and then you provide the answer. I've seen this go foul so many times in my career, and the consequences are so much greater than admitting that you don't know something. There's been a few examples, even forward deployed, where the commanding officer of the unit will, ask someone of senior enlisted or officer a question, and they don't want to look stupid. They don't, they allow their pride and kind of ego to take place, and like, oh yeah, well I know everything, so I'm going to answer the question even though I don't know the answer. And then that commanding officer will turn around and go look up the information himself or herself, and then they look it up, and then they see that leader didn't know what he or her they were talking about, and so that causes not only a problem, with the person or the leader that, posed as knowing something that didn't. But for every single person, in my opinion, that's underneath them, because now the commanding officer doesn't trust that leader, let alone the people that are under his leadership. And I've seen that happen way too many times, and it creates problems very quickly. So how hard is it just to humble yourself and to say, you know what, I don't know this, but I'm going to go find the answer to this, and I'm going to give you the right answer. Or if even of a subordinate comes up to you and says, hey, senior chief, what's going on with this? I definitely should know that, but I don't. Hey, I'll take you with me. Why don't we go find the answer together, and we can look it up, and we can be a teaching moment for the both of us. And that, I think, just empowers the junior sailor just as much as it did for the humility of the leader.
Yeah, I think you brought up something with, when your, commanding officer asks you a question, and it's something that you probably should know, and I'm sure the military is every bit as like the fire service when it comes to rules and regs and standard operating procedures. There's books and books and books of them. You cannot possibly know
Right.
everything. Yeah, you probably
Correct.
should know a lot of the core stuff, but the moment you shoot from the hip and give bad information to your boss, he in turn loses trust in you, and you're going to find
Right.
yourself being micromanaged, and now you're going to start to be pissed off because the boss is micromanaging you, and the reason why he's micromanaging you is because he doesn't trust you because you lied to him, basically. So that's the quickest way to find yourself being micromanaged by the bosses, is by you not owning up to the fact that I should know it, but I don't. Let me go find that out. I'll get right back to you. And again, you said that all comes down to ego and humility. There's things that I've forgotten more than I've learned. And my bosses would come to me and say, "Hey, what are we going to do about this?" And I would just like, I don't even remember what policy that's under. You have to give me a minute to figure that out. Or
Yeah.
I've called my bosses before, and I said, "Hey, look, I'm running into this issue. What do we do about this?" And I remember as plain as day. It was about 8 years ago. This was my next line supervisor who I would go to for answers. And I said, "Hey, chief, this problem just happened. What are we going to do about this?" And he says, "Dave, that's a really good question. I don't know for the life of me, but let me call you back." I respected that more than anything in the world, as opposed to him
Right.
saying, "Well, you should know that. You go look it up," type of deal.
Right.
So I respected him for that. Like I said, we can't know everything, but we need to make sure that if we don't know something, we admit to it and we go find out the answer.
Yeah, this kind of ties back into something that you mentioned earlier as well. Like how many minutes or seconds did it take for someone to shoot from the hip and say something incorrect versus how long does it take for that person to recover, or that person's leader to recover their trust in them?
Exactly, and it may only take one time for you to just totally come out of left field with some answer if it isn't right, and the boss is like, "Well, that's not even close to being right." I know that for a fact, and this guy, he clearly doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's trying to throw his bullshit on me. And here you go. Now you've lost that trust. Leadership is all about building relationships, and you've just kind of ruined that particular relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was a junior in my career, there was some leaders that I just didn't really respect because of their actions and everything. And although for the most part, I've had really great leaders throughout my career, let me just say that. But there were a few, and I would even go to the point of like, I wonder if what he's telling me is even true. Let me ask him a question. I already knew the answer to the question. And the response to it, not being truthful is you just lose all credibility to even your junior sailors or subordinates who are whomever, by not answering that truthfully and admitting that, instead of admitting that you don't know the answer.
Yeah, and I tell people it's okay not to know, just as long as you know how to go get the answer.
Right.
It's the same thing as like we said earlier. It's okay to make a mistake. That's how we learn. As long as we keep it as a teaching moment. And what I tell my guys is like, it's okay to make a mistake. We'll recover from it. once we figured out what the mistake is, we figure out what the solution is, we move forward. I said, if you keep making the same mistake, I'm gonna think something's wrong with you. I might have to hit you in the head. But providing that we use everything as a teaching moment, providing it's not a life or death, mistake, but
Sure.
the little things that happen, where in the fire department, you didn't lay out, or you didn't put the right hose on the ground, or you didn't pull up to the front of the building, or you failed to mention something that we're supposed to do when we give an on-scene report. It's okay. We'll talk about it later. I'm not going to berate you in front of everybody, but I'll pull it. Hey, man, a couple things to think about. We need to make sure that we do this, this, and this. So next time we'll have it nailed down, no problem, and we move on. And that's the other thing is that you can't carry a grudge either. A lot of people, if I get mad at somebody, I say my piece. Obviously I'll hear their side. I say my piece, and then as far as I'm concerned, it's done. We've talked about it. It's over. If they stay mad at me for being mad at them, well, that's on them. There's nothing I can do about it. But I don't hold a grudge. I may bring it up later on as a goofing point. It's like, oh, here's so and so. You gonna not put your gear on again? Just goofing around. But I don't hold grudges, and I don't think most managers or leaders should hold a grudge. If you highlight or pinpoint an issue, you talk about it, you get it over with, and you move on. You shouldn't hold a grudge on somebody, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Absolutely. The next piece I wanted to get into, I know we're getting kind of far into this podcast, but
Yep.
This next piece is something that I've learned from experience, but also was emphasized more in my degree, actually. Some of the stuff I'll talk about, but it's never stop learning yourself. You have to, as a leader, you can't forget that you still need to progress yourself. I had this one person tell me the saying once, which is, it goes, what is it? Sometimes you just need a fish, but don't settle for a fish if you can be taught how to fish. You need to constantly be investing yourself into becoming a better version of you, into a better version of a leader that you want to be. One of the things that I actually have to do with my my degree right now is every single course that I take, I have to journal, and I have to create this and maintain this leadership journal. And at first, it was kind of like, well, I mean, come on, really have to journal in this class? But the journal has to be specific on, like, okay, during the course of this week, what were your leadership challenges? How did you react to them? What was good? What was bad? What would you do different next time? And man, I was surprised as you put pen to paper, what actually comes out, and the ability to self-reflect off of that. There was a study that we read in class about it was, I think, top CEOs of Fortune 500 companies were what makes them a good leader. And one of the consistent things that kept on coming up was every single one of them always journaled, having that self-reflection piece about, this is how I can improve. This is how I can get better. Being critical on the things that you did, so you can build upon it and become better because of it, instead of recreating the wheel and not learning from it and keep on making the same mistakes over and over again. Taking those lessons learned from instances that were challenging as a leader, and using that towards your advantage and putting that those tools in your toolbox, so when it happens again, you can easily reflect back on, okay, I processed this, I understand what I did wrong last time. Now this time, this is how I'm going to take this on. It's almost like taking care of yourself. A lot of people, I think, forget to do that when you're in a position of leadership. I always say you can't take care of others if you aren't taking care of yourself.
Yeah, we look at that as like as a critical thinking skill, to be able to. In the fire service, we call it, we put that in our Rolodex, and for the young people that listen to that, Google it, you'll figure it out. But that's what we do is we look at our decision-making models, and we roll up on the scene of a call, and we can right away flip through our Rolodex. Have I seen this situation before? If it's yes, how did I handle that situation? I handled it this way. Did it work? No. What did work? This worked. Okay. So we kind of go back to that Rolodex, and that gives you that framework. Same thing with that journaling is hey, this is what I did today. This is the issue that I came up with. This is how I saw that problem. How would I make it better the next time? and you write all that down. So the next time that happens, you don't have to go back and refer to your physical notes. It'll be stored away in the back of your mind. So
Right.
it makes you a better critical thinker. And it's funny because I'm currently back in school myself, changed my major, and I'm going through organizational leadership as well. I'm working on my bachelor's degree for organizational leadership, and I had to read the critical thinking and the creative thinking books, and a little dry, but it was some stuff in there that it's like, hey, you know what? I'm already doing that. So the journaling thing, and I wish, and I was thinking about this the other day, I wish when I first started at the age of 18, I actually started a journal of what I did each day or each week or each pay period, so I could go back and take a look at it, see how I've grown, what I've learned, and what I can continue to do in the future. And when you talked about training, it's one of the things that I've told people. I said, the day that you feel that you don't need to train anymore is the day you need to hang it up and retire. A buddy of mine, Tony Chicarico, tell me all the time, your skills are perishable, and if you don't keep them fresh, they go bad. And
Right.
you have to train on not only the basic stuff, but also keep up with the new stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I was really surprised. Because when they first assigned that, I'm like, oh, I mean, I don't want to journal every week. Come on. But when you put pen to paper and actually start evaluating what happened in this situation, scenario, whatever, wow, I was really surprised as to what came from that. It's a great tool, and like I said, that came from a study where they interviewed a whole bunch of successful Fortune 500 CEOs, and that was a commonality amongst all of them.
And that's a good way to learn from your mistakes, is to actually jot them down, and what worked, what didn't work, and again, when we come into a situation that's like that or similar, we can act quicker on it, and kind of avoid the pitfalls that we had before.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple books. There's one book that we had to read for our class, and I always have to put a plug for this because I loved it. It was a great thing, a great book. The author was Warren Bennis, and it was called On Becoming a Leader.
Hmm.
So there's a list in there, and I actually have this printed out, and I have it at work. It's called Manager versus Leader, and there's probably like, I don't know, 15 things on there, manager versus leader. Some of them, I have a couple notes here on some of them. One says, a manager does things right, the leader does the right thing. The manager asks how and when, the leader asks what and why. The manager relies on control, the leader inspires trust. Yeah, it's a great book, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I like it when guys come on the show and they plug books, and we you get on our social media and somebody's like, oh, I read this book, it was good. Somebody put down, they said for 2020, I'm not a reader, but I did read these books, and I sent them a message. I said, believe it or not, in 2020 I read, I want to say I read 8 books paper wise, and I listened on Audible to 3, and that's the most I've ever read. But it's when you find a topic that's not only interests you, but also is kind of reflects on what you do on your job, you can gain so much. And I find myself, I don't journal pen and paper, I journal on my phone, where I can just, if I see something or hear something or read something, I can, put that quote right into my phone, and I can go back to that. And I like sending those out to, when I put my daily lineup out to my guys, of just some things to think about. And there's a lot of really good leadership books out there. Believe it or not, a lot of them that I've read are all military based, because I think that the military has had so much time invested in soldiers and war and things like that, these life or death decisions that need to be made, that there's just so many books that are out there. And one of the things that you and I talked about not too long ago, a few days ago, was that what you learn in Maryland is the same thing that sailor or soldier is learning in Japan, that they're learning in Germany, because it's all one book, where the fire service is just many different books. A lot of it can be subjective, but that's where I think we get a lot of this. I pull a lot of this leadership stuff out, read about it, how it was in the military, and then how can I kind of shape that into what we do in the fire service. And the similarities are awesome, and it's really exciting to be able to read that and say, we do that. One of the guys that I had on this podcast last year, he's a retired Navy SEAL, Jason Gardner. He works for a company called Echelon Front, and they talk about how they do their command and how they break their command down and how they give each person different parts of the command. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to him talk. He was in Howard County, and I kind of chuckled, and I talked to him afterwards. I said, and I think they call it decentralized command. I said, we do that every day. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, the moment the tones go off and we go on a fire and I get on the scene and I've got 50 guys that are working, and I start breaking them down in small groups and say, okay, you're this division and you're responsible for everything over there. So I have 50 guys on the fire ground that all have radios. But if I make, 2 groups and 2 divisions, and I'm only talking to 4 people, and it keeps my span of control really low. So reading about what you guys are doing and how it kind of plays into what we do in the fire service, I find it really fascinating.
So what's your go-to book? What's your number one recommendation?
Well, I've read a whole bunch. I obviously, for someone, when I started off with, I read It Starts With Why, which I recommend to everybody read that book. It talks about how to get to what your why is and why things are done. There was a book, It's Your Ship. I think that's one of the main leadership books that everybody has to read, which was a Navy book. I can't even remember the name of the guy that wrote the book. I read Team of Teams. I'm looking through my list right now. Fortitude by Dan Crenshaw. That was a really good book. Right now I'm reading The Leadership Challenge by Barry Pusner and James. Can't remember what his last name is, and my friend's going to kill me because that's one of the books that she recommended. And what else? I'm getting ready to start the Harvard Business Review 10 must-reads on leadership. What else did I read? Worst to First, which was about I think it was United Airlines or whatever, how the guy took over and went from the worst airline to the best airline. A lot of good leadership stuff in there. All of Jocko Willink's books, Extreme Ownership and leadership strategies and tactics. There's a handful of others. Right now, I'm actually listening to About Face from David Hackworth, Colonel David Hackworth, just to see what's in there that I can pull out of that. A lot of stories, World War II and Korean stories.
With Starts With Why, do you remember who the author is on that?
Simon Sinek, I believe.
That's who I thought. Have you? He has some phenomenal videos on YouTube about leadership.
Yeah, I've seen his TED Talks. They're pretty good. They are really good.
They're great.
Yeah, I tell everybody to read that. I've actually got a library started in the battalion office, and I've told all my guys, come in anytime, grab a book. I said, just make sure you bring it back when you're done reading it. And I've really gotten into Audible, so now when I'm driving around, I can listen to books as I'm driving. So, I tell people, I said, read a lot. You can get a lot of stuff from the business world, from the military. Haven't read a lot of fire department leadership books. And then listen to credible people that are talking out there and what they have to offer when it comes to leadership. And there's some good stuff out there. What would you recommend? What are some of the stuff that you recommended?
Yeah, I really like the On Becoming a Leader by Warren Bennis. That was a great one. Mm-hmm. I have actually Extreme Ownership on my bookshelf right now. I read that one recently. Yeah, those are the two that I can say off the top of my head. I have to go back. We've done so much over the program. I'll bring some more for you later.
Yeah, even the Dichotomy of Leadership was a really good book. The good thing about those particular books is that it breaks it down in simple terms so you can really understand. Some of the books that a friend of mine who's working on her PhD in leadership, she recommended a bunch of books. Obviously they're very cerebral, books that you would read in the master's or the PhD program, but there's a lot of good stuff in there because they've got over 30 years of leadership research under their belt of things that they can bring out. And, some of it goes over my head, but some of it's actually, kind of hits right on target. And, So I'm looking forward to moving forward in my education. I'm winding down in my career, but looking forward into my education of just something that's not fire department related, but this whole leadership and where we have a lack of it, and what can I do instead of complaining about it? What can I do to make myself better, and then pass that on? The succession planning stuff to pass on what I've learned to the people that are coming in behind me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
That's pretty much my list.
But I definitely appreciate you being on. I know you said like, oh, what are we going to talk about for an hour? And I told you it'll go by pretty fast, and we're
Yeah,
already
it
at the
did.
1 hour mark. So,
Yeah, it went by fast.
but there's just a ton of stuff out there, and I tell people, go out there and just read something, learn something, go take a class, get out of your comfort zone. That's the good thing is when you get out of your comfort zone, you might find that hey, you know what, this I actually kind of like this, and might kind of deviate you somewhere else, and then try to see where it fits in with what you do for a living, and see if you can make changes, local changes, and then if it works out, you bring more people on board, and then it kind of expands. So, I'm looking forward to that. So, but Clay, I appreciate you being on here. And before we go, I want to do one thing that I want to plug. You have your side business, and I want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to say you make pens, but writing instruments. But I'm going to allow you to kind of elaborate on that. And the reason why I want to bring that up is I know you took my son under your wing, and you allowed him to turn a pen on your lathe, and he made me a really nice pen for Father's Day, and I use it at work all the time. So go ahead, and I want you to plug your company and what you do, and how they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for that. So it's called 1893 Woodcrafts. So my buddy and I, probably 3-4 years ago, we started this company. I was always into woodworking and whatnot, but we got into anything to do with a lathe. So I started doing some pin work, and so the company right now has really grown a lot. But what we kind of concentrate on is making ballpoint, rollerball, fountain pens, whatever, from different types of styles out of historic wood from all over actually all over the world. So we have a lot of different like military ships, for example, the USS Constellation, the Constitution up in Boston, the USS Missouri battleship, like the ship that they actually Japan surrendered World War II on. We make pens out of that, some of the teak from that ship. We actually have stuff right now from the USS Enterprise. And historic American sites, like we just actually made one from wood that was taken out of the White House in the late 1920s. They did a renovation, and we have wood certified from that renovation that we made a pen out of. Or whether it's if you're in bourbon or whiskey or whatever, anything to do with alcohol that goes in a barrel, we have pens made out of barrel staves. So if it's Pappy Van Winkle or Jack Daniels, we have that. Historic sites from all over the world. We actually have some pieces from Windsor Castle in the UK, or even the HMS Warrior, which is kind of like their USS Constitution, if you will. It's just all over the place. Stuff from movies, wood from sets from Harry Potter. And it's just really cool. So we have a lot of fun in it. We have a lot of great contacts all over the place that are able to we're able to get this wood from, and instead of this wood going to waste somewhere, we're able to turn it into something that people can use on a daily basis and kind of preserve that history. We have a blast doing it. This was supposed to be our very first year at the Maryland Renaissance Festival as a permanent vendor, but because of COVID,
Yeah.
we got accepted. Last year we were a temporary vendor. We did really well there, and then we applied to be a permanent vendor. We got accepted, but then after you do that, you have to buy a building. We found a building that happened to be worked out really well for us, and we got so excited about it. And then COVID happened. So you can hopefully this year, we'll see, but hopefully this year you can find us at the Maryland Renaissance Festival. Otherwise, we're online at www.1893woodcrafts.com.
Yeah, I know you guys were working your butt off for the Renaissance Festival, because I remember, when I'd walk in the door, I go by and look at you, I know you had, I think you were trying to make some ungodly number. I want to say 800. I'm probably wasn't the number, but I
It's
know
not far off.
it was a lot of pins. And I mean, you guys were busting your butts, and then they pulled the carpet out from under you. But I mean, you can still buy these pins. And I bought one for my dad, he was a tin can sailor in Vietnam, and I bought him pen, and I believe I think it was from the Constellation, whatever one's in the harbor at the inner harbor.
Yeah.
And you turned that pen for me and put it all together with the nice Navy anchor and all that, and I gave that to him. And just so everybody knows that the prominence comes with this, you have the letters of authenticity and all that stuff. So you're not, you're not pulling the wool out or pulling the carpet out from under anybody. These are authentic wood, the genuine article. And I tell everybody that's listening to this, go get yourself a nice pen. You're wearing a uniform anyway. Most of the firefighters that are listening to this, go get yourself a nice pen set. Look these guys up.
We actually have a fireman themed pen too.
There you go. So you didn't have that before.
Yeah, we have it now.
Yeah, and I know that you can go get a nice pen set, so you guys can sport something that's unique, something that's one of a kind, and wear that on your uniform with pride. So you can find them. I know you're on Instagram, Facebook, as well
Instagram,
as
Facebook. Our website has everything, but our actual online store is on Etsy. We also do a lot of custom things too. We had a really cool opportunity recently where it was a couple's 1-year anniversary, and the wife came to us and said, "Hey, my husband proposed to me under this tree. If I get a branch from that tree, can you make a fountain pen out of it for us?" And so she brought us a branch of that tree. We cut it down. We put it on the lathe. We made a pin out of it, and I'm pretty sure she won the gift exchange for the 1st year anniversary.
Awesome. And I tell anybody that's listening to that, this is 100% legit. These his workshop is his entire garage. He does not park his cars in his garage. His workshop is amazing, and I just like popping by and watching you work, but try not to bother you too much. But I do appreciate you allowing my son to make that pen. And
that was a lot of fun.
I love it. So again, Clay, thanks a lot for being on the show. And 1893 Woodcrafts.
Woodcrafts, plural.
1893
Woodcrafts. Actually, 1893 came from its naval heritage. So 1893 was the year that the United States Navy established the rank of a chief petty officer. So that's where we get our name from.
There you go. So again, Clay, thanks a lot for being on here and helping me kind of get that leadership word out there, especially from the military aspect. And I think a lot of people will be able to peek into this and see that not only does it work, what's working in the military, it also leaks over into, police and fire, any public service, as well as, if you're a boss in a Fortune 500 company, a multi-billion dollar company, nobody wants to work for a jackass. They want to work for somebody who they can relate with. So again, Clay, thank you very much for being on here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Take care of yourself.
You too.
Bye.